sa gitna ho niyan ay nandiyan yung mga kulang panuntunan na sana naman sundin natin para at least di man kayo nakatapos wika nga ng communications makita man laang na meron din ho naman kayong etiketa na sinusunod, alinsunod sa rules ng pakikipagtalastasang maayos. Ano? Alright, mga kaibigan, mamaya, pagbabalik ho natin after the break, Huwebes, tatalakay ho tayo sa isang magandang usaping pangkalusugan na ugnay ho sa pagiging, ano nga ba sasabihin ko? Pagiging ano yun? Angelo, yung ano yung topic natin sa sa health, pagiging
suena, balance, mapuerza. Este el RPND XXX Radio Ronda Zamboanga.
This is Radio Philippines Network, XXX Zamboanga, XXX Zamboanga.
Lawmakers but the Commission on Elections counteroffer only for one.
RPN Radio Philippines Network Radio Ronda.
XXX Zamboanga.
Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
A sigh of relief for many Filipinos. President Duterte says it's now okay to do away with face shields in outdoor settings. But the Interagency Task Force is still finalizing guidelines on the face shield policy. While the announcement is a welcome change for many, experts remain divided on the policy. Our Tristan Odalo reports.
After several months of mandating the use of face shields, President Rodrigo Duterte now approves the recommendation not to wear them outdoors.
I was informed that the technical advisory group on the medical experts on the use of face shields pwede na tanggalin sa labas. No more face shields outside.
But there are limitations because face shields will be required in areas classified as 3Cs. These are crowded places, closed spaces, and close contacts.
It's a crowded room, tapos
3Cs. These are crowded places, closed spaces, and close contacts.
Kung magkadikit-dikit ang tao. Tapos,
The shift in the face shield policy is a welcome break for some Filipinos.
Mas delikado.
Talaga. Kasi mainit sa
pakiramdam. Ang close contact kung magkadikit-dikit ang tao.
The shift in the face shield policy is a welcome break for some Filipinos.
Nagpa-blurred yung salamin ko. Kasi mainit sa pakiramdam. At saka nga, yung parang ang hirap magganon-ganon. Lalo na ako, nagsasalamin ako.
While this could impact their sales, some face shield vendors say they understand the president's decision. Face shields in these sidewalk stores in Mandaluyong are being sold from 15 to 200 pesos. While this could impact their sales, some face shield vendors say they understand the president's decision. Face shields in these sidewalk stores in Mandaluyong are being sold over the effectiveness of wearing a face shield. Infectious diseases expert Dr. Roger Solante maintains face shields are vital in indoor spaces with poor ventilation, and when experts are still dividing over the effectiveness of wearing a face shield. Infectious diseases expert Dr. Roger Solante points out face shields are vital in indoor spaces with poor ventilation, masking when physical distancing, especially since COVID-19 is transmitted through droplets and is airborne. Dr. Benjamin Go points out while face shields may have helped at the beginnings of the pandemic, proper masking remains the key, especially since COVID-19 is transmitted through droplets and is airborne. This is also supported by a wind engineer who conducted initial studies on face shields.
Hangin na yung contaminated. Mataas yung risk ng airborne transmissions na kailangan natin na hindi naman nag-attribute to super spreader events.
The mandatory use of face shields has become one of the most controversial and talked about government policies as the COVID-19 pandemic rages on. The debate continues on whether or not this can effectively protect you from the virus. The mandatory use of face shields has become one of the most controversial and talk about government policies as the COVID-19 pandemic rages on. The debate continues on whether or not this can effectively protect you from the virus. But for some Filipinos, this issue is
While
not
face
only
shields
about
may no longer be
inconvenience,
needed
but also
outdoors,
shelling out
a
money out of their
vaccination
own
card might
pockets
soon
as
be
they try
required to be
to make
worn
ends
like
meet.
an ID
Tristan Udalo,
if a person
CNN Philippines.
needs to leave home. Interior Undersecretary Martin may no longer be needed outdoors. A vaccination card not just to bring with them their vaccination cards, ID, but to wear them on lanyards around their neck. Interior Undersecretary Martin Dino in a briefing on Wednesday appealed to the public not just to bring with them their vaccination cards, but to wear them on lanyards around their neck.
Sa lahat
This,
ng
he
mga
says, is
barangay
to make it easier
na ito na
to
sana
check
ang
a
maging
person's
sakripisyo ng bawat Pilipinong nabakunahan. Kung ikaw ay bakunado na, paglabas mo ng bahay, isuot mo na yung vaccination card. Paano mo malalaman na bakunado kung hindi nakasabit ang vaccination card? At paglabas mo ng bahay, hindi ka na maabala ng pulis, ng barangay, natatanungin ka, asan ang vaccination card mo?
In the same briefing, Resto PH President Eric Teng recounted how some people who wanted to dine in at restaurants became upset when asked to show their vaccination cards. Dino said this situation could be avoided if his suggestion were to be followed. Metro Manila is under Alert Level 4. Under this classification, dine-in services, barber shops, hair spas, nail spas, beauty salons, and physical religious gatherings can operate indoors for up to 10% of capacity, but only for fully vaccinated people. Health officials are still deliberating their final recommendation on the vaccination of the younger population against COVID-19. In a statement, the health department said it supports providing additional protection for children. But while they cannot be inoculated just yet, the agency says those eligible should get the COVID-19 shot instead to achieve the cocoon effect. With this strategy, experts have explained the vaccination of adult household members also gives protection to children, since studies have shown minors acquire the virus from adults at home. The DOH also underscores the importance of prioritizing the vulnerable population, including senior citizens and those with existing illnesses. Latest government data shows over 23.28 million people have received their first dose of COVID-19 vaccine. 19.38 million of them are already fully vaccinated. In the United States, more Americans will roll up their sleeves for a third COVID-19 shot. That's after health officials approved a booster dose for the elderly and select adults. But for experts, there's another vaccine people of all ages should get: the flu shot. CNN's Britt Conway has more.
One dose, a second dose, and soon, for some, a third dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer's booster just got the FDA's emergency use authorization, and today, a CDC panel will decide whether to recommend it. Then the CDC director signs off. The booster is targeted at people 65 and up, those at risk of severe disease, and people at risk because of their jobs, like healthcare workers, teachers, and grocery workers. The CDC is expected to fine-tune recommendations on how boosters should be given and talk about where we go from here.
I suspect what's going to happen is we'll continue to collect data on this cohort, 65 and over, and other people who are made eligible. And eventually the agency may walk down the authorization to younger age cohorts.
But there are still millions who haven't gotten their first shot. In the U.S. right now, on average, more than 2,000 people are dying from COVID-19 every day. And we're closing in on another threat, flu season, which kills about 12,000 up to 50,000 Americans every year. The American College of Emergency Physicians says there are early signs that the coming flu season could be severe. And with so many hospitals struggling already, health experts are recommending flu vaccines, just in case.
But it's better to be prepared. And I think this is the part where humility really is a very important part of our science approach.
I'm Britt Conway, reporting.
The Commission on Elections is not budging from its September 30 voter registration deadline. That's despite the appeal of 23 senators for a month-long extension. As our Melissa Lopez tells us, lawmakers are still trying to negotiate for more time.
The joint hearing of the House and Senate on Thursday on preparations for the 2022 polls saw lawmakers bargaining with the Commission on Elections for more time for voter registration.
Tawaran na ito ng bilas ang isda.
Tatawad na sana ako ng 10 days Pero
para ma-accommodate lahat, gawin na lang natin 2 weeks ang request natin sa COMELEC.
Both the House and the Senate have passed bills for a month-long extension of the September 30 deadline. But the COMELEC is standing firm.
What we have said, and that has already ruled twice, not to extend the registration. With more reason that we have to have an earlier deadline because of the preparations for pandemic.
Senator Frank Drilon earlier threatened to slash the poll body's budget to, quote, the barest minimum if the poll body refuses to move the deadline to October 31st, to no avail. Commissioner Marlon Casquejo then floated a compromise, a one-week extension, but only after the filing of certificates of candidacy from October 1 to 8. The proposal is yet to be approved by the COMELEC and Bank. But senators are insistent.
Sa dinami-dami na nakapila, ang layo naman ng 1 week sa 1 month, hindi siya compromise. 2 weeks is much better naman than 1 week. Pagbigyan naman ninyo yung mga na-lockdown.
Voter registration is ongoing from Mondays to Saturdays, generating long lines of applicants starting at dawn. Meanwhile, the poll body is mounting a voting day simulation. Covered courts are also being eyed as poll precincts for better ventilation. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
President Duterte seals the deal. He signs the Certificate of Nomination and Acceptance, or CONA, as vice presidential candidate of the ruling party PDP Laban. The signing was held in Davao last night with Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, president of a faction in PDP Laban that ousted Senator Manny Pacquiao. The Cusi wing is hoping Senator Bongo will change his mind and follow suit. Go rejected his nomination as presidential bet. The other faction is expected to issue their own CONA with Pacquiao as standard bearer. The COMELEC gave them until September 27th to comment on the petition filed by the Cusi wing to declare them as illegitimate members of PDP Laban. Senator Coco Pimentel, chairman of the Pacquiao faction, said they will respond to the petition. Coming up on Newsnight, President Duterte signs a measure to tighten rules on Philippine offshore gaming operators, or POGOs. And more details coming in on the death of painter Brie Hanson. We get a glimpse of what happened minutes before she was found lifeless. Stay tuned.
Officers are always ready for rescues by air, land, and sea. New York State Police shared video of a rescue that took place high atop a mountain in the Adirondacks when an injured hiker was reported stranded. In a joint effort between the State Police Aviation Unit and the Department of Environmental Conservation, a chopper was deployed, and while hovering roughly 75 feet above Crane Mountain, the hiker was plucked from the peak and carried to safety. Over in Maine, a resident called police after a deer spotted in their yard fell into their pool. Concerned that the deer could get caught in the pool's cover, a responding Old Town officer worked quickly to wrangle the panicked animal, which reportedly didn't waste time drying off, instead running off into some nearby woods. Finally, in Colorado, a pair of cops showed impressive delicacy using kid gloves, figuratively, to rescue a kid stuck, literally, in a balcony railing. The officers spoke gently to the toddler who had gotten her head stuck between the bars, keeping her calm while using a tactical entry ram to pry the bars open. It worked, and the little girl was reunited with her mother.
Okay, don't ever do it again.
The officers then cleverly distracted the toddler with a sticker while checking her for injuries.
Do you feel sick?
No.
You're doing okay?
Yeah.
For Take a Look at This,
You're welcome.
I'm Jeremy Roth.
Nor has an important role to play in addressing the problem of malnutrition. Given our reach and our portfolio of nutritious and delicious products, we are in a position to make a real difference.
Apart from educating moms and partnering with different organizations, NOR has also remained true to its passion for good food by continually improving on their products to provide essential nutrients that will benefit the families that use them. From its NOR Sinigang sa Sampalok Mix Original that now contains vitamin C to the popular NOR broth cubes that are now also a source of iron. NOR's continuing innovation for positive nutrition is part of the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. The company's mission is to provide a positive social impact in the markets where it operates. For more information, consumers can visit NOR's website or follow NOR Philippines on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Sam Tidwani, CNN Philippines.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. President Duterte's satisfaction score amid the pandemic is on a decline, at least based on the last 3 surveys of the Social Weather Stations, or SWS. In the November 2020 survey, the president received plus 79 net satisfaction rating, considered as excellent and his highest so far. It plunged to plus 65 in May and went down a bit further at plus 62 in the June 2021 poll. SWS says these numbers, however, are still classified as very good. The results of the 3 surveys were released in one go today. The independent polling group explains it did not release the results right after the conduct of the surveys because it had to carefully study the data due to changes in methodology. SWS fellow and political science professor George Tigno says the president's high satisfaction rate in the November 2020 survey may be attributed to the decline in the number of COVID-19 cases at the time. Another SWS fellow and economics professor Jeffrey Docanes says based on data, most survey participants believe the Duterte administration is doing good in its pandemic response. SWS says it will release full details of the surveys in its website soon. President Duterte has signed into law a measure taxing Philippine offshore gaming operators, or POGOs, in a bid to enforce stricter rules on gaming. POGOs will have to pay a 5% tax on services rendered by gaming licensees and a 25% withholding tax on the gross income of foreign employees. The total revenue collected will be allocated to the Universal Healthcare Law implementation, enhancement of health facilities, and attainment of sustainable development goals. The government expects over 120 billion pesos in revenue over the next 4 years. Former Senator Antonio Trillanes calls on Vice President Leni Robredo to announce her plans for the 2022 elections. Robredo earlier bared plans to meet with Senator Manny Pacquiao and Mayor Isko Moreno for a unified opposition, but both have already declared their presidential bids. Trillanes, the chairman of the Magdalo Group, says they will back Robredo if she also guns for the post. But if not, he says they are prepared. Trillanes previously submitted his name for a possible presidential bet of opposition coalition Isang Bayan. Netizens are also calling on Robredo to succeed President Duterte, but her spokesperson earlier said she will make an announcement in due time. Acción Democrático welcomes at least 20 new local officials as it prepares to slug it out with other parties in the 2022 polls. Among the new members is Marinduque Vice Governor Romulo Bacoro Jr., who will take on incumbent Governor Presbitero Velasco, the father of House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco. Party President Isko Moreno says they are now looking for potential members from the Visayas and Mindanao. Action adds those who transferred today came from different parties, including the ruling PDP Laban and the Nationalista Party.
Mukhang nakachachamba ang aksyon, puro giant killer dito. Manila, Pasig, puro giant killer. Alam mo, minsan, ako naniniwala ako, walang grabang nakakapuwing, puro buhangin lang.
Sila po, bago po namin tinanggap, we made sure that they knew and they know the principles that the parties are standing on and the core values.
Also among Accion's prominent members is Pasig City Mayor Vico Soto. The party was founded in 1997 by the late Senator Raul Roco. It had its biggest political outing during Roco's failed presidential bid in 2004. Authorities are digging deeper into the death of visual artist Brie Hanson, whose body was found at a hostel in La Union. Here's what happened minutes before that. This is CCTV footage shows Hanson and her companion Julian Ongpin. The artist's legal team says the two had a heated altercation. Both went in and out of their room before locking themselves in. The lawyers stress initial medical legal report indicated there were signs of struggle, citing bruises on Hanson's neck and body. The Investigation Bureau says it concluded a second autopsy upon the request of Hanson's family. There were no immediate details on the results. The PNP says initial probe showed no signs of foul play, although they also confirmed she died of asphyxia or lack of oxygen. The agency insists it's not giving favors to Julian, the son of prominent businessman and former Trade Minister Roberto Ongpin. Julian is facing drug complaints for cocaine use. The police add cocaine was also detected in Hanson's urine sample. We've got movie news coming up. A sneak peek at a new documentary about Britney Spears' struggle against her conservatorship. Plus, the Wizarding World will return to the big screen earlier than planned. Find out more about the next Fantastic Beasts film when Newsnight returns.
Living the Ranger life.
Something wicked this way comes.
Here's your first look at Denzel Washington and writer-director Joel Coen's The Tragedy of Macbeth. The latest big-screen take on Shakespeare's Scottish play arrives in theaters December 25th.
Movies continue to be the magical art that speaks to everybody, everywhere.
Tom Hanks was on hand at a press preview for the new Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles, designed to advance the understanding, celebration, and preservation of cinema through exhibitions, screenings, programs, and collections. The museum includes 50,000 square feet of exhibition space, 2 theaters, and more. It opens to the public September 30th.
Yes, are you kidding me? Yes!
Two-time Emmy nominee Kathryn Hahn is set to play a red carpet legend. Variety reports the actress will star as Joan Rivers in The Comeback Girl, a limited series for Showtime. Hahn will also executive produce the series about the comedy trailblazer. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
Good morning, Kuya!
Welcome back. Today in entertainment news, we've got Britney Spears, Will Smith, and a Harry Potter prequel. CNN's David Daniels rounds it all up in our Hollywood Minute.
Britney's never had one person she could trust. Not mom, not dad.
Britney had a fear that her family would barge in and take everything.
What was going on inside the conservator?
Welcome back. Today in entertainment news, we've got Britney Spears, Will Smith, and a Harry Potter prequel. CNN's David Daniels rounds it all up in our Hollywood Minute.
Britney's never had one person she could trust. Not mom, not dad.
Britney had a fear that her family would barge in and take everything.
What was going on inside the conservatorship?
Here's your first look at Britney versus Spears, the latest documentary about the pop star's long battle to end her conservatorship. The film debuts next Tuesday on Netflix.
What do you have to say for yourself, Dumbledore?
We have a title and a new release date for the follow-up to Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Warner Brothers says the third film in the Harry Potter prequel series, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, will open April 15th, 2022, 3 months earlier than previously announced.
She turned around to see what you beeping at. It's like the summer's a natural aphrodisiac.
Summertime, the Grammy-winning summer anthem from DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, is headed to the big screen. Deadline reports Will Smith is set to produce a hip-hop movie musical for Screen Gems based on the 30-year-old single. No word on the plot or whether the Fresh Prince himself or DJ Jazzy Jeff will appear on screen. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
A new herd of talking ponies are prancing their way to Netflix this week. CNN's Rick Damigella reined in on the ponies in this report.
Once upon a time, Earth ponies, Pegasi, and unicorns live in harmony.
Why can't we be friends anymore?
Maybe one day, we'll figure it out.
What in Equestria is going on? The three pony races no longer live in harmony? It sounds like a magical quest for My Little Pony: A New Generation.
Hi, new friend!
Unicorn attack! Who are the voices behind some of the main characters?
We'll need glitter. Lots of glitter.
Izzy Moonbow, who I play, she's very open-hearted and just, very ready to accept anyone and lives without fear in a way that I think we all can be reminded of to live sometimes.
Gotcha! Your son is safe now, ma'am.
Hitch Trailblazer, he's the town sheriff in Maritime Bay, and he's a bit of a Boy Scout.
I feel in many ways Sprout is the heart and soul of, no, I'm kidding. Sprout is the anti-Hitch. Maybe whatever James just said, opposite of that.
Okay, well, this day just got a whole lot more interesting.
I absolutely adored and fell in love playing Zip Storm, who is this confident, beautifully drawn character. Shout out to our animators, who stands firmly in her power and reminds everybody else of the power and their truths that they should live.
Big talk for a little pony.
I think you'll find I'm average height.
In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
And before we go, over 7 million people around the world are celebrating their language today while encouraging you to learn it too. Now, in its fourth year, the International Day of Sign Languages was established to recognize the linguistic identity of people who are deaf. It was set on the same day the World Federation of the Deaf was formed back in 1951. With the theme, We Sign for Human Rights, the occasion aims to promote the use of sign language for both deaf and hearing people. We still have 93 days more before Christmas, and that's it for tonight. This is me signing thank you and goodbye. I'm Ruth Cabal for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
Tuloy-tuloy ang balita. Sabado at Linggo. Kaya narito kami para ihatid ang
not be suitable for very young audiences.
at impormasyon para sa inyo. Newsroom Weekend sa CNN Philippines.
Having fears is a normal and healthy part of life. It's our body's natural response to perceived danger. But when fears cause extreme distress and interfere with our daily lives, it becomes a cause for concern. Today, we'll focus on phobias, that strong, unrealistic fear of an object, a person, an animal, an activity, or a situation that pose little or no actual danger in reality. They come in all shapes and sizes, and the list can be quite long, so we'll talk about the more common ones. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We're here to build a healthier future for you. People with phobias actively avoid certain objects or situations or endure it with extreme fear or anxiety. To help us with today's discussion, let's welcome our guests. With us is Dr. Jerome Go. He's a psychiatrist and a fellow of the Philippine Psychiatric Association. Also with us is Dr. Ramon Eduardo Villasor, who's a counseling psychologist from the Makati Medical Center as well. A phobia is a fear of one particular trigger that's divided into three main groups. Dr. Teddy, can you explain what these are?
For a specific phobia, this is for a specific object or situation. It can compromise everyday life, so whatever the phobia is, it causes a great deal of anxiety and stress, anxiety, and it gets triggered but when that event happens, that situation happens.
Complex phobias, on the other hand, have triggers that are less recognizable, such as leaving the house or being in a large crowd. Social anxiety and agoraphobia fall under this group. Dr. Go, could you tell us more about this and how does one develop it?
So social phobia, or otherwise classified as social anxiety disorder, as the name implies, is a condition where a person experiences marked fear or anxiety when he is in a social situation, fearing that he will be evaluated negatively. So they are afraid of being judged negatively by people for whatever reason. This is social anxiety disorder or social phobia. On the other hand, agoraphobia is marked stress or fear inducing panic symptoms when you are placed in a situation where a person cannot escape or is stuck in that situation.
Now, as society changes, the list of potential phobias also change. One example would be nomophobia, which is actually the fear of being without a cell phone or a computer. And as you can imagine, this has developed recently, and because people do get very attached to their gadgets and can't function without them. Dr. Go, what are some of the more commonly known phobias?
I think the more common phobias nowadays, especially given the pandemic, is really germophobia. Now, this falls under specific phobia wherein people, because of the pandemic, is really aversive or afraid of getting exposed to viruses, germs. That's why we are taking care of ourselves. The problem is the overestimation of fear that sometimes can affect how we live our lives.
Acrophobia, or the fear of heights. Now, this phobia makes people avoid higher floors of a building, maybe bridges, maybe mountains. Dr. Teddy, what happens when someone with this kind of phobia is exposed to these?
Even the idea that they are about to enter such a situation will really stress them out. So they will avoid it at any cost. They will try to work their way around it, just to avoid it.
Now, another common phobia is aerophobia, or the fear of flying. Now, in terms of fatalities, air travel is actually safer than any other common mode of transportation. But Dr. Go, what causes this type of phobia then?
The causes would be news, like when we hear about plane crashes, which is quite uncommon nowadays, but it can still have an impact on people, or air accidents. No, these are things that would make a person fear riding a plane, or even the actual experience of turbulence while inside a plane. So all of this could elicit a certain overestimation of fear that is already inappropriate and sometimes incapacitating because a person actively avoids that phobic stimuli.
Phobias of spiders can have a far more significant impact on your life. So having arachnophobia can prevent someone from participating in certain situations because their mind tells them that you're in danger from spiders. How can we tell if it's normal fear or just preservation, or if this is already an actual phobia?
In order for us to classify or diagnose that this is already a phobic reaction or a phobia that needs to be addressed, is that it is very persistent. Like it's almost always when a person sees the phobic stimuli, there elicits a response. And the response is normally considered inappropriate or exaggerated or extreme to a sense that it creates a lot of fear, so as making a person unable to proceed with his activities.
Does the sight of blood make you feel faint or even squeamish? While some people feel uneasy about blood from time to time, hemophobia is an extreme fear of seeing blood. Dr. Teddy, how does having this impact someone's life?
They'll make up any excuse. They will create an environment that they feel safe. So that may be in their homes. And they will, if they go beyond that border, then they may feel the symptoms. Anxiety, the stress is there. It persists perpetually in almost all situations. And this would be good markers for definition if somebody is suffering from phobia.
Now, another phobia on that list is claustrophobia. It's an irrational and intense... Specific phobias are long-lasting and cause intense physical and psychological reactions. It's not like the brief anxiety you feel when taking a test or maybe giving a speech. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. What are some of the impacts of phobia on a person beyond the symptoms?
You have to remember that these people who experience phobia, they can recognize that they are avoiding the situation because of their fear, but they may actually like to perform in public. They just fear to be judged. Similarly, for agoraphobia, patients may become homebound in its most extreme state because of their fear of being exposed in situations where escape is difficult. So they just stay in their home, confined in their home, because they feel that it is their safe place, so to speak.
Dr. Teddy, how does this impact the person's life, especially in children?
One way that you can work towards conquering or managing your phobia would be to constantly expose yourself to situations that, for lack of a better word, make you feel uncomfortable. So they not being exposed to other kids may actually make it a little bit more difficult when they finally get to socialize with other people.
Can a true phobia, someone who's diagnosed with a phobia, affect their mental health overall?
This can actually develop into a full-blown anxiety disorder or a mood disorder. Many times, patients who have phobia can also have a comorbidity of substance use disorders. This is all because of the tendency of a person to try to appease his fears by taking some downers like alcohol or something to calm them, like substances.
A specific phobia can actually lead someone to have substance abuse problems. So can you explain this and why this is the case?
I'd like to cite a case where a patient first came to me and said, I always fear exposing myself in public, but I cannot because that's part of my job. And this person would normally take a little dose of alcohol before he would have to speak in front. The problem was, as time went by, his alcohol consumption went on, and later on his function was compromised and his alcohol consumption just went up. So his intention was to really calm himself, but instead of just calming himself, he developed a different kind of addiction, which actually complicated the matter. So these kinds of comorbidity actually exist, and that's why we really need to pay attention as to what the underlying cause and the focused diagnosis that professionals must guide patients to resolve.
Yes, because the risk of suicide or self-harm also increases for some individuals with specific phobias. Why does this happen, Dr. Go?
This happens because the person is struggling to try to control a situation that he is having difficulty controlling. This feeling of control is innate in every individual. And in so doing, he is having difficulty to control a certain situation, but it also makes it more complicated because there are a lot of undesirable reactions in his body that he is experiencing. A person may actually do something harmful as a consequence of this struggle.
Now, Dr. Teddy, is there a way or how is a phobia diagnosed?
Maybe a family member brings the patient for consultation because they may not be willing to do it themselves. So maybe that's a start. Or the family member shares their experience. If the patient is open to sharing.
If someone were to seek consult, say, for a possible, what they think they have is a phobia, what would the initial screening look like?
The process with a psychologist is usually 50 minutes. So during that time, there's a lot of...
There is treatment for most phobias, and people who have them are nearly almost aware of their disorder. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Dr. Go, let's talk about the treatment or the therapy portion of someone who is properly diagnosed with a phobia. What happens?
Patients who come to us normally already have an idea that there is something wrong about their behavior, about how they are managing their fears. However, they struggle. Hence, they come to us. Now, when they come to us, the first thing is to identify what is the phobic stimuli and how they are behaving towards it. These are the cognitions that we need to be able to identify with our patients in order for them to appreciate that, okay, this is the one that's causing my fear, and what should be my approach, proper approach to it. So when a person can already correct that cognition, he can now start to expose himself slowly, gradually, like the sensitization therapies, slowly exposing himself through actual exposure. That's number one. Number two is, of course, psychotherapy, wherein we talk to our patients about the proper behavior of coping with it. Like if they see there is something wrong about their behavior, then they will be willing to adjust to it. Of course, there are also treatment modalities like pharmacotherapy, wherein a person can take some medications in order for them to properly manage their fear or anxiety symptoms.
What is the risk behind this? What can you advise those who are experiencing this?
Well, these are some lifestyle phobias that patients can identify themselves. But what's most important is for us to get some guidance from professionals. No? I think that is the most important thing that patients can do for themselves.
Dr. Teddy, can you please give us some of the examples of simple changes that people with phobias can make in order for them to get started?
They must have a level of compromise that works for them, not a level of compromise that somebody dictated on them, but something that they can that they find they can live with.
What can family members do if they have a loved one who has a phobia?
Again, depending on the phobia, they can reassure them that they are fine. That's probably the family support. That's where they can help the most. And if the patient should fall back into their usual routine, they can help them course correct.
Is giving a pill to lower someone's anxiety the best way to manage phobias?
The best treatment outcomes will always be a combination of psychotherapy and pharmacotherapy. But it is not always the case in terms of initial treatment. Of course, the first thing that we need to do is to identify first the situation and if the patient is going to be amenable to taking medications.
Are there any self-help techniques that you could share with our viewers to hopefully help them start to manage their phobias?
The first thing I think with self-help is really correcting negative conditions, like acknowledging that the fear is overly estimated, that there might be some thing that you need to tone down a bit in terms of how you appreciate the fear for a particular object. Another thing is, of course, to try to desensitize yourself by exposure therapy slowly, by just imagining that this object may not be as fearful or worrisome or anxiety-provoking. Deep breathing exercises will always be effective. And of course, seeking help whenever it is already necessary professionally will, of course, also be very important.
And with that, I hope our discussion was very helpful to all our viewers today. And thank you, psychiatrist Dr. Jerome Go and psychologist Dr. Ramon Eduardo Villasor. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.
Hindi malilimutan ating pinagdaanan, ating pinagsamahan, sa hirap at ginhawa, sa lungkot at saya. Salamat, salamat, salamat sa RPN. Noong simula pa lamang, kayo ang naging magulang sa aking bawat hakbang. Dulo nyo'y tamang daan sa aking mga pagsubok. Kayo'y laging tumutok. Kayo na ang laging kapay hanggang sa magtagumpay. Salamat, salamat, hindi malilimutan gintong alaala ng ating pagsasama sa hirap at ginhawa.